right, so let's dive into Bitcoin wallets.
Yeah, it's something that can seem a bit intimidating, I guess, at first.
Yeah, for sure. It's not like just, downloading an app or something.
Mm.
And there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. So today we're going to break it all down. How do Bitcoin wallets actually work?
Yeah, we're gonna go beyond just, the surface level here, assuming you've got some idea of what Bitcoin is.
Right.
But we wanna take it up a notch,
Yeah.
talk about the nuances, and really give you a solid understanding of how to keep your Bitcoin safe.
Okay, perfect. So I think a good place to start is with this idea that a lot of people think Bitcoin wallets like actually store your Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's a really common misconception. It's easy to picture it like a physical wallet,
Right, right.
but it's more accurate to think of it like a keychain.
Okay, a keychain.
Yeah, holding these very specific keys.
Okay, so we're talking about digital keys, not physical coin.
Exactly.
And these keys are what give you access and control over your Bitcoin on the blockchain.
Precisely.
Okay.
And or just like with a physical keychain, you've got, different types of keys for different purposes.
Okay, so let's break down these key types. We've got public and private keys.
Right.
What are they?
So imagine you want someone to send you a letter. You'd give them your address,
Yeah.
right? That's essentially your public key in the Bitcoin world. It's what you share with others so they can send you Bitcoin.
So my public key is like my Bitcoin address. It's open for anyone to see,
Yeah.
and they can use it to send me Bitcoin.
Exactly. But just like you wouldn't, give everyone the key to your house,
Right.
you've got to keep your private key secret.
Ah, okay, so that's where the private part comes in.
Mm-hmm.
So my private key is what proves that I own the Bitcoin that's sent to that public address.
Exactly. It's like the signature on a check.
Okay,
Without it, the check is worthless.
right. And this is where we get to those, those kind of scary stories of people losing millions in Bitcoin because they lost their private keys.
Unfortunately, yeah, those stories are all too real.
Yeah.
And it really highlights the importance of not just understanding what a private key is, but also the different ways you can store them securely. And that's something we'll definitely delve into later.
Yeah, for sure. Because losing access to your private key essentially means losing access to your Bitcoin.
That's right.
No way to recover it.
Like losing the combination to a safe,
Right.
whatever's inside is basically gone.
Okay, so before we even get into types of wallets, let's just really drive this point home.
Yeah.
Protecting your private key is like mission critical here.
It's the foundation of Bitcoin security.
Okay.
Absolutely. But before we get into, storage methods, I'm kind of curious. Have you ever thought about like how a Bitcoin transaction actually works behind the scenes?
Yeah, actually, I have. I mean, I get the basic concept of sending and receiving, but I'd love to understand, what's going on like on the blockchain level when I say, buy a cup of coffee with Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's actually a fascinating process.
Yeah.
So imagine the blockchain as this, massive public ledger. Everyone can see it.
Okay, so I'm picturing like a giant, global spreadsheet documenting every Bitcoin transaction.
That's a great visualization, yeah.
Okay.
So when you buy that cup of coffee, your wallet's going to create a transaction record. And it includes, your public key, the coffee shop's public key, and obviously the amount of Bitcoin being sent.
Okay, and this is where my private key comes in again, right?
You got it. Your private key is used to digitally sign that transaction, proving that you're the legitimate owner of the Bitcoin.
So it's like my digital signature on a check
Exactly.
authorizing the transfer of funds.
Precisely.
Okay.
And that signed transaction is then broadcast to the entire Bitcoin network.
Wait, so it's not like sending an email to the coffee shop. It's more like, announcing it to the whole world.
Yeah, it's a public declaration of the transaction.
Wow. Okay, so that's a whole other level of transparency there. And I'm guessing this is where miners come in.
Absolutely. Miners are like the accountants of the Bitcoin network. They verify those transactions, make sure everything's legitimate, and then add them to the blockchain.
So they're basically confirming that I actually have the Bitcoin I'm trying to spend.
Yeah.
And that the transaction hasn't been tampered with.
Exactly. And once they've done their job, added it to the blockchain, it's permanent. It's irreversible.
Okay, so my signed transaction becomes part of this, like, immutable record.
Yeah.
Visible to everyone on the network.
Precisely.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've got our keys. We understand how transactions work. Now let's get to the heart of the matter here.
Yeah.
The wallets themselves. I've heard, terms like hot wallet and cold wallet.
Right.
Can you break that down for us?
Think of it this way. Hot wallets are always connected to the internet, like your smartphone with a mobile wallet.
Okay.
But that constant connection does come with, certain security risks. Because they're online, they're potentially vulnerable to hacking attempts.
And that's where cold wallets come in,
Right. Exactly.
offering, a higher level of security, especially for storing larger amounts of Bitcoin.
Right. Cold wallets are like your high security vault. They keep those private keys offline, far away from the internet's prying eyes.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's all about choosing the right tool for the job, right?
Mm.
Depending on your needs, the amount of Bitcoin you're dealing with.
Absolutely.
And within these two categories, there's like a whole spectrum of wallet types, each with its own pros and cons.
A whole variety, yeah.
Okay, well, perfect, because that's exactly what we're going to dive into next. We're going to explore all these different types of Bitcoin wallets and their unique features right after a quick break, so stay tuned. So we talked about hot wallets being always online, convenient for quick transactions, and then cold wallets, those are offline, way more secure.
Yeah.
But I know within those two categories, there are a ton of different options out there.
Yeah, there really is a whole variety of wallets catering to different needs, levels of, tech savviness, all sorts of things.
So let's say I'm pretty new to Bitcoin. Just kind of want to test the waters, maybe buy it a cup of coffee or something.
Right.
What kind of wallet would be a good starting point for me?
In that case, I'd say a mobile wallet is probably a great option.
Yeah.
They're super user-friendly, readily available, and you probably already have the perfect device in your pocket.
Right, my phone.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're talking about apps like Exodus or Trust Wallet.
Yeah, things like that.
Okay.
You can download them right from your phone's app store.
Easy.
Yeah, super easy to send, receive Bitcoin. You can even use them to buy things at certain stores.
So it's kind of like using Apple Pay or Google Pay, but for Bitcoin.
Yeah, you can think of it that way.
Okay, cool. But let's say, now I'm starting to get a bit more serious. Accumulating more Bitcoin, maybe thinking more long-term, what would be a good next step in terms of, upping my wallet game?
Right, so you want something a bit more secure than just a phone app.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where hardware wallets come in. These are small devices specifically designed for storing your private keys offline.
Okay, so they're like physically separate from my computer, my phone, which I guess helps to protect them from hackers or malware.
Exactly.
Okay.
Popular ones like the Ledger Nano S or Trezor, they're basically like little USB drives.
Okay.
And you plug them in when you need to make a transaction. The transaction is actually signed within the device itself.
So even if, my computer is compromised or something, my private keys never actually touch the internet.
Exactly. That offline storage makes them incredibly resistant to those kinds of attacks.
Makes sense. And you mentioned paper wallets earlier too. Those sound pretty interesting, almost old school.
They are, yeah. It's very much a throwback approach, but, still appeals to some users. It's basically a printout of your public and private keys, often in the form of QR codes.
So literally a piece of paper that represents my Bitcoin.
That's the idea. And because it's completely offline, it's theoretically very secure.
Right. But like we talked about before, if that piece of paper gets lost, damaged, my Bitcoin's gone.
Exactly. There's no getting it back.
Okay, so those come with their own set of challenges.
They do. You need to generate them securely, store them properly, protect them from fire, water, pets, all sorts of things.
All right, noted. Now, beyond this whole hot versus cold thing, there's this concept of custodial versus non-custodial wallets.
Right. Yeah, that's a really important distinction.
Could you break that down for us?
Think of it like this. With a custodial wallet, you're basically entrusting a third party to hold your private keys for you.
Okay, so kind of like a bank
Exactly.
holding my money in a savings account.
Yeah, perfect analogy.
Okay.
A lot of the popular exchanges like Coinbase, Binance, offer these as part of their services.
Right, so that sounds pretty convenient.
But the trade-off is that you're relying on that third party for security.
Right, so if they get hacked, if they have some kind of system failure.
Yeah, your Bitcoin could be at risk.
And then there's those stories about, exchanges going bankrupt or disappearing completely.
Right, it happens. And that's why a lot of more experienced Bitcoin users prefer non-custodial wallets.
Okay, so with a non-custodial wallet, I'm the one holding my private keys.
Exactly.
Okay, so I'm in complete control.
You are.
But that also means I'm responsible if something goes wrong.
That's right. Yeah, higher security, but also greater responsibility.
So there's a whole range of these non-custodial wallets out there, right?
Yeah, everything from the mobile and desktop wallets we talked about
Yeah.
to hardware and paper wallets.
Okay, so it really is about finding that balance,
Mm,
between convenience and security.
absolutely.
And there's one more type of wallet that I've heard about. Multi-signature wallets or multi-sig wallets.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure how those work.
So imagine a safe deposit box that requires 2 keys to open.
Okay.
That's essentially the idea behind multi-sig.
So instead of just having one private key that controls my funds, I need multiple keys to authorize a transaction.
Exactly. And those keys can be held by different people
Mm-hmm.
or even stored in different locations.
Ah, I see. So that's where the multi comes in. So like a business could use this, right?
Yeah.
Where, say, 2 out of 3 partners need to approve any spending.
Exactly. It adds that extra layer of security, makes it much harder for a single person to compromise the
It's
funds.
like a checks and balances system, but for my Bitcoin.
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay, interesting.
They're also becoming popular for things like managing shared expenses,
Yeah.
or even family savings.
So, wow. It seems like there's a lot to consider when choosing a Bitcoin wallet.
There is, yeah. It's a testament to how creative and innovative the Bitcoin community is. They're always pushing the boundaries of what's possible with this technology.
Speaking of pushing boundaries,
Hmm.
what are some of the new and emerging trends we're seeing in the Bitcoin wallet space?
That's a great question. One thing that's really interesting is this rise of mobile-first wallets that are going beyond just sending and receiving Bitcoin.
Okay, so more than just, replacing your physical wallet.
Right, exactly. They're being designed as these comprehensive financial hubs. So you can manage not just Bitcoin, but other cryptocurrencies, even connect to things like decentralized finance or DeFi applications.
And the DeFi, that's a whole other deep dive we could do.
Yeah, for sure.
But essentially, it's like a parallel financial system
Yeah,
built on the blockchain,
right.
offering things like lending, borrowing, trading, all without those traditional intermediaries.
Exactly. And as DeFi keeps growing, we're seeing more and more integration with these Bitcoin wallets,
Yeah.
turning them into, gateways to this whole suite of financial services.
So my Bitcoin wallet could become like my one-stop shop for managing my digital assets.
Potentially, yeah.
Wow, that's exciting.
Yeah.
But before we get too carried away with the future, let's bring it back down to earth for a second.
Right.
Talk about some practical considerations when choosing a wallet.
Absolutely.
Because, no technology is perfect.
Of course not.
So what are some key things that our listeners should keep in mind when making this decision?
Well, the first thing, and probably the most important question, is what are your needs? What's your risk tolerance? Are you using Bitcoin for, small everyday purchases? Or are you storing a significant amount for the long term?
So I guess a hot wallet might be sufficient for someone just starting out making frequent transactions.
Right.
Whereas a cold wallet would be more appropriate for, larger holdings, long-term savings.
Exactly. And it's not just about the amount of Bitcoin. It's also about your comfort level with technology, with security.
Right.
Someone who's less tech savvy might prefer the simplicity of a custodial wallet,
Okay.
while a more experienced user might want that control, that autonomy of a non-custodial solution.
Right. So it's a personal choice as well.
It is.
Right.
And it's also crucial to do your research, look at different wallet providers, look for companies with a solid track record, in terms of security and customer support.
And of course, never forget the golden rule of Bitcoin.
Uh,
Back up your private keys
yes, that's probably the single most important step you can take to protect your Bitcoin.
or your seed phrase.
Right. Write it down, store it securely offline.
Yeah.
And never, ever share it with anyone.
All right. So we've chosen our wallet. We've backed up our keys. What are some other security best practices we should be aware of?
Well, a really common mistake is using weak passwords. Things that are easy to guess.
Right.
Make sure your passwords are strong, unique, and stored securely.
Okay. Good point.
And whenever possible, enable two-factor authentication.
Ah, yes. Those little codes you get on your phone or in an email.
Exactly.
Okay.
Just adds that extra layer of protection,
Mm.
makes it much harder for, someone to get into your accounts.
And I guess being aware of phishing attempts is important too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's a big one. Scammers are always trying to trick people into revealing their private keys or their seed phrase through fake websites or emails.
Right. So if something sounds too good to be true, if someone's asking for your private information, that's a huge red flag.
Absolutely.
Huh.
Always double check those URLs Be skeptical of any unsolicited messages, and never ever enter your sensitive information on a website that you don't completely trust.
It sounds like being cautious and informed is just as important as choosing the right wallet in the first place.
Couldn't agree more. Security is an ongoing process. It's not just a one-time thing.
For sure.
It requires, ongoing vigilance, awareness, staying up to date on the latest threats.
Well, I'm definitely feeling a lot more informed, a lot more empowered after this conversation, but I'm sure our listeners still have some burning questions.
Probably. Yeah, we've covered a lot, but there's always more to learn.
So in the next and final part of our deep dive, we'll be tackling some of your most frequently asked questions, all about Bitcoin wallets, so stay tuned. Welcome back to our deep dive on Bitcoin wallets.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground so far.
We have, from the different types, the security aspects, even a glimpse into the future of this whole wallet technology. But now it's time to tackle some of the most common questions we get from our listeners.
Yeah, those burning questions, the things that people really want to know.
Exactly. The things that, often cause a bit of confusion, maybe even some concern. So let's clear them up.
Sounds it.
Okay, first up, we have a question from Sarah. She asks, what if I lose my phone and my Bitcoin wallet app is on there? Is all my Bitcoin gone?
That's a really common fear, and it just shows how important backing up your wallet really is. So when you first set up most mobile wallets, you're given this thing called a seed phrase.
Okay, a seed phrase.
Yes, it's a series of words, and it acts like a master key to your Bitcoin.
Okay, so it's not actually tied to the physical device itself.
Exactly.
So-
It's a secret code that can unlock your Bitcoin on any compatible wallet.
Ah, I see.
So even if Sarah loses her phone, she can just download that same wallet app on a new device, enter her seed phrase, and boom, she's got access to her funds again.
Okay, that's good to know. But that really does highlight how important it is to keep that seed phrase safe.
Absolutely.
Never share it with anyone.
Treat it like, the keys to your house or your bank account. Keep it offline in a secure location.
All right, next question comes from Alex. He's asking about hardware wallets, and he says, are they really unhackable? What if someone steals my physical device?
So hardware wallets are built with security as, the top priority. They keep your private keys offline, isolated from the internet, and most common hacking attempts.
So even if someone gets into, say, Alex's computer or phone, they can't get to the Bitcoin stored on his hardware wallet.
Right, that's the big advantage.
Okay.
But you are right, the physical device itself could be stolen or lost.
So what happens then? Is there, any recourse in that situation?
Yeah, so most hardware wallets require a PIN code to access the funds.
Wow.
So without that PIN, the thief can't spend the Bitcoin.
Okay.
And even if the device is lost completely, the owner can recover their funds using their seed phrase on a new hardware wallet.
So it's like 2 layers of protection.
Exactly.
The physical device, and then that seed phrase backup.
Yep, a system that combines both physical and digital security.
Makes sense. All right, let's move on to a question about something that's getting a lot of attention these days. Self-custody. This is from John. And he says, what exactly is self-custody, and should I be thinking about it?
So self-custody is basically about taking full control of your Bitcoin. You hold your private keys. You're the one responsible for their security.
Okay, so it's the opposite of using a custodial wallet, where, a third party, like an exchange, is managing my keys for me.
Exactly. You're your own bank. You have all the freedom and control.
But that also means if something goes wrong, it's on me.
That's the trade-off, yeah. It does require, a certain level of technical knowledge and a commitment to those security best practices.
So maybe not the best choice for someone who's brand new to Bitcoin.
It can be a bit overwhelming at first.
But for those who value that autonomy, that privacy,
Right.
and are willing to put in the time to learn, self-custody can be pretty empowering.
Absolutely.
And there are resources out there, tools to help make it easier, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. The self-custody landscape is constantly evolving with new solutions like multi-sig wallets and more user-friendly interfaces, things like that.
Okay, so it's not just about, writing your seed phrase on a piece of paper and hiding it under your mattress.
Thankfully not, no.
Well, I think we've covered some really important questions here about Bitcoin wallets. But before we wrap up this deep dive completely, any final thoughts, key takeaways you want to leave our listeners with?
I think the biggest takeaway is this. There's no one perfect Bitcoin wallet. It all depends on, your individual needs, your risk tolerance, how how comfortable you are with the technology.
It's about finding that right balance.
Yeah. Security, convenience, control.
And don't be afraid to experiment a little, try different options.
Okay.
The Bitcoin ecosystem is always changing.